welcome back everyone, it's me Matt, and thank you so much for joining me today. We are looking at these beautiful artillery pieces at the Aquino Tank Weekend, which was hosted by the Canadian Tank Museum and sponsored by World of Tanks, the video game. And I was honoured, blessed, to be working alongside an organisation that produces World War II reenactments and other ceremonial duties for Canadian artillery, known as the LIMBER Gunners. Who are the LIMBER Gunners, you may ask? Well, let's go through it today and give you a little bit more context, because this organisation I obviously have a huge respect and love for, because I am myself an artillery gunner reservist. Maybe not for much longer at this point, but hey, that's another story. The LIMBER Gunners is an organisation formed to assist with both the current and future acquisition, restoration, maintenance, and display of historic artillery and associated military equipment under the umbrella of the Toronto Artillery Foundation, and on loan from the active reserve regiment of the 7th Toronto Regiment. Big shout out to 7 Tour guys, really appreciate you. A lot of you have reached out to me in the past. I love you guys. Thank you for following my channel. As I said, may not be part of the artillery family much longer, but in saying that, the artillery family never really splits up, never really leaves. Once a gunner, always a gunner. And this is why this video is so prevalently important to me to share to you all, and I'm sure I'm going to get almost 0 views on videos of this kind, because the YouTube algorithm actually hates my content that has more sort of vlog style videos. Not sure why. I really don't understand why the YouTube system throttles down on videos of this kind, because they are really engaging and fun to learn about the artillery, but that's just the way YouTube works. It likes to produce traffic to go to its own little niche, but this is still something I want to showcase for the LIMBER Gunners, because it was such a fantastic weekend working with the people in this organisation. But why are they called the LIMBER Gunners? Well, they're called the LIMBER Gunners after the gun number of the gun detachment, who was detailed as the LIMBER Gunner to care for the maintenance and preservation of the detachment's guns, which today are the tasks of the association as they relate directly to the current inventory of the Foundation. And of course, there's no exact date of when the position of the LIMBER Gunner was created. They do know that the rank of Lance Bombardier, the rank of the LIMBER Gunner was appointed to, has survived, together with the rank of Bombardier, from the old Grenadier battalions of the British Army that lasted up to the disbandment in 1855. The first operational asset of the LIMBER Gunners was the beautiful 25-pounder field artillery howitzer used by Canadian, British, and other Commonwealth gunners in World War II and the Korean conflict. It was the most famous artillery piece in both conflicts. Even today, the 25-pounder can be found on military strength in a number of third world countries. The guns, of course, are the regimental colours of the Royal Regiment of Canadian Artillery, and they are imprinted with the royal cipher of the reigning monarch on each battle at the time of manufacturing. And of course, these beautiful guns are about to be showcased by some of the LIMBER Gunners here. But before I get into handing it over to the professionals here of talking about this reenactment and the weapons that are being involved in it, I want to do a massive thank you to the LIMBER Gunners and the Association 7 Tour. I cannot thank you enough for getting me involved with working with fellow gunners on such an incredible event. It was an honour to be in 2 days worth of fire missions, firing 12 rounds per gun, myself as the number 1. Really exciting, which we're going to show some footage of too. But I'm going to hand it over to the leader of the day, Joe, who was kind enough to go over the entire setup of the LIMBER Gunners, the 25-pounder, and all the equipment that links to creating these incredible reenactments for the Aquino Tank Weekend and many other events that the LIMBER Gunners attend. Let's take a look, shall we?
Okay, welcome everyone. So as you can see, with these beautiful guns beside me, we're working today with the LIMBER Gunners. I thought it'd be really impressive to actually see some World War II artillery, because of course, being a servant gunner, I think it'd be really relevant to talk to some active gunners that are actually working with these guns. This is Joe. Joe, pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Joe's going to explain a little bit about what's going on here, what you're looking at, and kind of walk us through the gun line of these beautiful 25-pounders. So over to you, Joe.
All right. So when we first started LIMBER Gunners, we had our first 25-pounder, what we call the A1, and this was made in Cyril, Quebec. So it's Canadian built. The LIMBER behind it was also made in Cyril, Quebec. And then the quad, our A1 quad, was built right here in Oshawa, Ontario. It's a 1944 Chevy, built on the British Morris design of the time. We've had this originally, 1994 is when we got it up and running for the first time, and it's been going through the museum here. They do all of our maintenance and they help us a lot. We don't do a lot of the, we do running maintenance, but they do all of our engine maintenance, all that stuff.
That's good.
The 25-pounder has been deserviced, meaning it can only fire blanks. Both of our 25-pounders can only fire blanks, and we do fire them 10 to 15 events a year. We
Wow.
do golf
Wow.
tournaments. We've done funerals, unfortunately. We do social events, special events. Anyone that wants a living piece of history, we will bring it out and showcase our history.
Fantastic.
And that's what we do. We showcase the history. It's a
Fantastic.
living history instead of behind a rope in a museum.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned this one has actually come from Ireland, so this has been used within the fairly close time period compared to the others.
Yes. So this 25 pounder was actually firing live 14 years ago. 2010 is when it was decommissioned.
Okay.
The Irish Republic put it out to the Commonwealth. We're getting rid of our 25 pounders, and there were display guns at the time, part of a ceremonial guard.
For sure.
But they were still firing live. Okay. So Canada got 3 of them. The number 1 gun is at our Juno Beach Memorial in Normandy. Number 2, which is right here, came to Toronto to the Limber Gunners. And their number 3 gun is in Quebec at 3BAM out of Quebec. So Canada got 3 of their 25 pounders.
Wow.
We display it just like the other one. We take this, you'll notice a difference on the muzzle brake. That one is a little shinier than this one. And it's got the Irish flag on the front. It's also got a plaque on the back, which they asked us, if you're going to take our guns, we want our flag and we want a plaque at the back saying where it came from, and we are proud to display that.
Fantastic. And the Limber Gunners, let's talk a little bit about them. How many members do you have roughly of the crew that work for an event like today, on average?
So we are all volunteer. 90% of us have served the guns,
Nice.
myself included. My ex-RSM right here, Ron Patterson.
How you doing?
Hi,
Good.
nice to see you again.
And myself. Some of us have full-time jobs and do this on our spare time,
Nice.
myself included, but most of us are retired members. And we have about 100 members in the Limber Guns, or Limber Gunners. Active, a day like today, we'll have about 30 over the
Wow.
weekend. Coming, some can do a half morning.
Sure.
Somebody like me, I'll be here all day today and all day tomorrow.
Fantastic.
And we're bringing in new, younger gunners, or even people who have never served the gun.
That's good.
To come in, just because we're all getting older.
For sure. I think that's really important that you mentioned that, because activities like this, if we don't have people engaged and getting the younger generation involved, and hence why we're doing videos like this, is unfortunately that there won't be people to keep this going. And I think for myself as a gunner, it's part of my duty to support and to try and help support these kind of activities, initiatives, because if we don't, as I said, it could be a thing of the past, and we cannot let history like this go to waste.
And the information that we have,
For sure.
that I was, when I first started Limber Gunners in '94, I actually had World War II and Korea War veterans
Wow.
talk about the guns, and that's where I got my information.
Wow.
I also had a Korea War vet teach me how to drive the quad. I had never stepped into a right-hand drive, double clutch vehicle before. And the setup, when we get there, we'll show the setup of the pedals.
Sure.
They're opposite of what you would think. So
Okay.
we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, for sure. If you could showcase this beautiful gun for us, because even myself, I've seen a lot of 25 pounders, but I don't know the intricacies of it. So maybe just a basic overview, if you could.
Sure, if we
Come on
walk through this side. Now, one thing about back in the day, the 25 pounder, the Germans actually thought it was a magazine-fed automatic howitzer. The rate of fire of these was so high, up to 9 and 10 rounds per minute. Back then, without an autoloader,
Yeah.
that was huge.
Very
now, that's
fast.
not sustainable, as a serving gunner would know.
Yep.
But if you had to fire 30, 40 rounds, you could get those rounds downrange pretty
Sure.
quick.
Yep.
Then you'd slow down. And the reason is, as the round is fired and you open the breech, the firing lock recocks itself, so rearms itself, and the casing is shot out. So you open the breech, it's ready for that next round, you close it, ready to fire.
Right.
I'll show you how that goes.
For sure.
So we have the firing lock here. It is in the cock position. We can put it on safe or keep it on fire. So we've got the extractors here, which would catch the lip of the casing.
Yep.
I'm going to have to lower the breech a bit.
Wow.
So as we fire, right here, you'll notice the firing pin will go in.
Wow.
When I open the breech, you'll notice that recocks itself. So we're ready for the next round. So
Right.
it was load, fire, load, fire,
Wow.
high rate of fire.
Very fire.
So that was new to the time, which is amazing. Even, that's something we now use in
That's
our
right.
C1s and C3s.
Yeah.
And then the M777, same thing. Moving on to this side, so one person here would fire the gun, run the sights, and run the elevation.
Wow.
So you could run this gun on a very minimal detachment.
Interesting.
Which they did a lot through attrition. You'd have 6, 7 guns in a battery, or in a 2-troop battery. You could run that with fewer troops.
Right.
Again, that high rate of speed or high rate of fire wouldn't be able to happen.
No, for sure. But there's a lot of responsibility here then. So, and just a little bit of context in terms of what Joe's talking about there. So on the C3 howitzer, we have the number 3 position on the left here and the number 2 on the right. So elevation and traversing is 2 separate entities, but in this particular role, it's combined. So not only are you trying to aim the gun, looking through the sights, you're firing the gun with the actual lanyard or the trigger there as well. So there's a lot of responsibility in this member for sure.
Yeah, and he is getting. He also did. We have the anti-tank sight here.
Right.
So he was doing tank drills as well.
For sure.
But which was actually good. The way we do it now, it's like traverse, 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 ready, fire.
Yeah.
He's actually traversing it on his own and firing it.
Wow.
So a lot more accurate for this.
Yeah.
And as we talked before, the sight is on a 360 degree, so not as accurate as what we use now in mills.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, and that is kind of, I wasn't aware. I wasn't aware that it's a 360, so it's mills. Yeah, so in terms of, aiming the guns, obviously we're using angles and bearings. So with 360 degrees, there's not as much tolerance than the 6,400 mils that we have, but it's still pretty accurate. I mean, it's rate of fire. That's the artillery, right? Rate of fire. But how many guns would you see on average in a World War II battery or regiment? Like, what would you kind of see?
They would have, well, depending on the size of gun. This is a medium field gun.
Yeah.
Towed. 6-man detachment.
6-man. Okay.
And then there would be 2 troops of 4 guns or 3 guns.
Okay.
Again, as attrition came down, they would drop a gun and fill the manpower out onto the other guns.
Right.
But they would be pulling 6 to 8 guns in a battery.
Interesting. Okay, and I noticed this has a base plate. So this is obviously going to be punched into the ground and then can pivot on its own axis, correct?
So yes, it's called a traversing ring.
Traversing ring, okay.
Now, most of the ones in World War II this was taken off the gun and mounted on the limber.
Oh, okay.
For ease of movement,
Sure.
because as you see, it gets in the way of you trying to get into the gun.
Possible. Can you explain a little bit about this piece of equipment here? I think it's the firing ring, is that correct?
It is a firing ring, or traversing ring.
Traversing ring, okay.
The gun this would be lowered.
Okay.
The gun would hook up to the truck. We would pull the wheels onto here.
Okay.
This mechanism here would come up and lock in. So now the gun can't slide off, and then the gunners can actually rotate the gun in a 360-degree circle. So you can fire behind you, forward, and all.
Fantastic. Now, in terms of recoil, it does have its own recoil system, correct?
It does.
Okay, and I'm assuming it's not that big of a projectile, but it's probably still got a pretty big of a kick.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So it's got an equilibrator, just like the C1, C3.
For sure.
But the breech ring would come back about 2 feet.
Oh, wow. Okay.
On the stays. It would slide back on full charge, which would be our supercharge.
Okay, and let's talk a little bit about charges. So I'm used to obviously, up to charge 7 on the C3 with our cartridges. What are we looking at for the kind of cartridge configuration for a gun of this kind?
So we have 4 charges.
Okay.
Charge 1, 2, 3, and supercharge.
Supercharge, okay.
Our maximum range on this was 12,500 yards.
Wow.
4.5 miles, around 7 kilometers.
Wow.
So in terms of what you would serve or I had served, 13 to 18 kilometers, and then the 777, 42 kilometers, we were pretty close to the enemy.
For sure.
So within 12,000 yards.
Right. And projectile-wise, we're looking obviously HE, smoke. Is there anything else in the World War II era that we'd be utilizing in projectile?
They actually had base eject smoke. They had the HE. We had flechette.
Wow.
They had a what we call a heat round, or basically a lead round for anti-tank.
Okay.
We also used fuses. We had VT and what we call MTSQ, mechanical time super quick.
For sure.
So VT being variable time, we could set the time on the, even back then you could set the time on the round for an air burst.
Wow. And VT at the time was obviously very secret, very, very new. Of course, I would assume the gunners were kind of trying to keep that to themselves. I'm sure they were quite rare, though.
They were towards the end of the war.
Towards the end of the war.
They were not out in 39 and 40.
Yeah, for sure. And just in terms of, how fast you can get this gun into action, how long are you looking at? Like, once you've come off the back of the truck here and you've got, setting up your aiming post, setting up your director, how long would you be looking on average to set up the gun?
It's same as now. You'd get into the minutes.
Okay.
So you could be within 5 minutes. You could be firing.
Wow.
With a good, hopefully CPNFC and the survey troop was already waiting for you.
Right.
You could be firing within 5 minutes.
That's incredible.
So very quick.
That's incredible.
And it's very basic as opposed to the way we do it now with all the different
electrical
and mechanical. This was all what we call the MAPS, mechanical or manual artillery plotting system.
Right.
It was all done on paper with a protractor, compass, and a piece of string.
For sure.
So,
And in this particular gun, so one thing in the artillery we have is converge, and converge is something in modern artillery we're not really utilizing anymore because the computer does all the work for us. But in this configuration, converge is basically allowing the battery and the guns to kind of direct their fire onto one position. And when we do sighting on the C3, we don't really use converge. It's not necessary because it's already plotted into the data that's given to us. But I would assume in these configuration, converge would be very much needed.
it would have been, and we would have been more dispersed, so
Right.
that converge would have played a bigger part into it
Right.
to get the rounds onto the same target.
Very
so
interesting.
yes, converge
Very
was a big part, and with our gun orders.
Yeah.
It's still in there.
Yeah.
We don't use it anymore.
Right.
Back then, it was a very big
Very
part
prominent,
of it.
prominent. Now, something that I've always wondered, and I'd love if you could educate me a little bit, is on this dial gauge here. Can you explain a little bit about what's going on and how that's being utilized? I think it's the...
So the elevation cone.
Yeah, elevation cone,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
So the elevation cone, it's basically you've got charge 1, 2, 3, and supercharge.
Okay.
It says right there.
Yep.
And I can turn that down just so you can see.
Wow.
So supercharge, 3, 2, and 1, and you've got it here. So they would slide this along. You would be given an elevation.
Right.
You would find your elevation. There's a detente right here that
Seen.
would tell you where you're looking for, and it would literally tell you right up to here, up to 360 degrees.
Wow.
Once you set it, we have a bubble down here, and all you would do is you would set where you want to go,
Yep.
and then elevate the gun to level your
level the
bubble.
bubble.
So it's the exact
Same as today.
Same
Yeah.
system we use today.
Fantastic.
Leveling bubbles. Bubble here and bubble here,
Okay.
and line,
Wow.
bubble,
Line, bubble, line.
line. Same thing we do today.
Wow. And then the sighting system, obviously very similar again as we look through today. I'm just going to have a quick peek through here.
That might be onto the aiming posts.
It's a little bit off, but still, again, the principle of artillery doesn't change. It really doesn't. It's incredible.
So we, back then, and you'll see the plate here,
Yep.
a gun aiming point, GAP, we would still use 2.
Wow.
We do now. Back then they would use 2, never in the same quadrant.
Right.
And something as close as 10-10, 20-20. I mean, when you're 12,000 yards from the enemy,
Right.
you want to be able to get out of action
For
pretty
sure.
quick.
Yeah.
So the exact same system, and the dial sight, you would do swing right, traverse left. So
Wow.
it's the same thing. You would set your angle here. Your bearing is on top on the sliding ring.
Wow.
So it's all the same. There's your bearing right there. You would lock in for C of A.
For sure.
And there you go.
Incredible. And why this is so fascinating to me is, like I said, artillery doesn't change. This is a World War II piece of equipment. The principles of aiming the gun, identical. There's really no differences there, in all honesty, and that's what makes artillery so unique with things like fire discipline. Is it can be used across any gun platform. You can either use the fancy electronics, which, as we know, in modern warfare, it's starting to get a little bit more complicated in terms of being able to fight back against modern electronics. Artillery can be done with just basic data, math, and using some instrumentation to get rounds on target. Very, very exciting. Okay, so let's. I'd love to have a look at the logistical side of feeding this
back to
beautiful
the
being.
limber.
Yeah, back to the limber. Let's talk a little about this.
So back then they would have a limber which would hook onto the gun from here, and then the limber hooks onto the truck. So it's a 3-part system.
Okay.
The limber holds 32 rounds, and the 32 rounds would be for GPO's open action, self-defense. You would always carry 32 rounds with you as much as possible,
For sure.
and constant resupply
Right.
as you would move forward of the line.
Okay.
And these come with ammo trays, and you would unbox them and have them pre-made. So
Wow.
when you open the ammo tray,
Wow.
when you open the ammo tray, the round and the casing were here ready to be
go.
mated right into the gun. So you wouldn't have to unbox them.
Wow.
Now that's when you would get resupplied by the vehicles would drop 500 rounds
Sure.
down to you.
Yeah, yeah.
All the guns would unbox 32 and carry them in here.
Wow.
So for very, very quick action on the road, you could be called at any time, as you would know.
Interesting. So, and why this is critical is, logistics. I know it sounds very boring and very menial, but it's not. This is absolutely crucial to feeding this gun. If we don't have ammunition, we can't fire the guns. So, in my setup, when I'm working with the C3, we have our tubes. They come off the trucks, and most of the time we unload and have to do a lot of the work in the field. This is really interesting. Of course, in World War II, you don't have that luxury of prepping your ammo once you're in a fire mission or preparing to go on the gun line. So this is really nice to see. I would love to see a configuration like this on
the other limber. If we walk over
Sure,
here,
yeah,
I've
let's go
actually
take a look.
got one set up for
Okay.
that. So here's a round and
Wow.
a casing already in there. So I'm going to pull this out and put it on the ground.
Oh, they're removable.
They are
Fantastic.
removable. So we have a round that's actually been fired. As you see, the driving band has gone through. So, and it's got a VT fuse on it.
Wow.
So the casing would be here, the round is here. You would literally be able to pull them out, mate them, and put them right into the gun.
Wow.
So this kind of gives you a little more, little better description
For
on
sure.
how it would be pulling it right out.
Wow. And so when the ammunition is getting pulled out, like you said, this tray would be loaded ready with the loading member, or he would take it from the limber in the tray left in there?
It was both. If they wanted, they could literally
take
line
them
them
out.
up behind a gun.
Nice.
But they would, same as we do now, they would have a loading platform or an
Exactly,
ammo stand.
Yeah.
We would take them out, put them on the ammo stand, and then if they had the time, they would reload these with the next 32 rounds.
Wow.
It depends on if they're in the middle of a fire mission.
Sure.
It all depends on the situation.
Sure. Very impressive. So this is, again, like I said, I know it doesn't
gonna put
sound
this
very
back.
important. Yeah, for sure. But it is. This kind of loading system and the ability to be able to remove these trays, get ammunition to the guns quickly is absolutely crucial. So really, really cool to see the logistics side in World War II was very detrimental to what could be a successful fire mission or not. Okay, so let's talk about the vehicle itself. I think it's kind of interesting as well, getting the gunners to the gun line with the vehicles.
I'll do my best on this one. It's brand new to
Okay,
us
okay.
and very new to me. I'm one of the drivers, so
Okay.
I actually haven't driven this. It hasn't driven on the road yet.
Okay.
It's right out of the museum. They've been
Interesting.
working on this since March when we got it.
Okay.
So it's drivable but not roadworthy. We can't take it on public roads.
Okay.
So
Okay.
we'll go around to the driver's side.
Sure.
Right-hand drive.
Yeah. Okay, so let's take a look at the vehicle now, because this is crucial to getting the gunners to the firing line. So over to you, Joe.
All right. So again, this is a 1944 Chevy built here in Oshawa, Ontario. We took delivery in 1993, 92, 93, and had it fully restored, and it was driving in 1994. So its first parade was the VE Day parade in Ottawa in 1995.
Wow.
It is a right-hand drive double clutch. So when you go inside, you'll see the gas is in the middle, the brake is on the right, and the clutch is on the left. Not easy to get into, but once you get to understand, it slides in easy.
Yeah.
But what we did as Canadians, being taller than Europeans back then, the changes we did to this vehicle, being built on the designs of the British Morris Company quad, or field artillery tractor, GM, Ford, and Chrysler would literally, given the plans, they all made the exact same vehicle.
Right.
This, on the front, you'll see the Chevy plate. They were allowed to put a Chevy, Ford, or Chrysler plate on it.
Interesting.
What Henry Ford did was every rivet, every bolt had his cursive F to make sure everyone knew it was a Ford.
Wow.
But this being a Chevy, very easy to drive. I'm the principal driver of it, and it's lovely to drive. It's again, it's got a sliding seat, which was new back then.
Right.
Canadians were bigger. We put the sliding seat in.
Okay.
And it gives us tall people the ability to get back in and out. At the time we got it, it had the four-wheel drive serviceable. We've disabled that. We'll never use it.
No.
And the PTO, the winch,
Yep.
it's got a reversible winch. You take the hook off, it can come off the front of the vehicle or the back to either pull yourself out or pull somebody else out.
Wow.
So we've disabled the PTO as well, power takeoff, for
Right.
those that don't know what PTO is.
Okay. How fast can this go roughly on average?
About 40 to 50 miles an hour.
Wow.
We would never do that.
No.
We run it, we drive this from downtown Toronto out to here. It's about a 50-kilometer trip.
Okay.
And it takes about 2 hours to 3 hours to do that 50-kilometer trip.
no doubt.
Again, we're driving through Toronto.
For sure.
On the way
And when
here.
you're towing a beautiful piece of equipment like that, you don't need to be going fast. People
You
will
don't.
look at it, and it's an antique.
Yes,
So.
and the stopping distance
Sure.
is triple because we don't have power brakes. Everything
Right.
in this is manual, so you have to, take it slower. Not, you're not following too close behind the car in front of you. Again, everything's manual, so you have to take that much more precaution in driving it.
You actually have to drive this.
have to
it's
drive
not
it.
like the MSVS that we're using today,
Exactly.
all automatic. This is an actual skill. It's a skill, in all honesty,
Yes,
to drive a vehicle
and
of this kind.
there's no air conditioning. All of the stuff that you do, general maintenance is done from the inside.
Okay.
The brake cylinder, the master cylinder is accessed through a port right here.
Wow.
So I check the oil in there. The oil would be right there.
Wow.
And back in the war, they would have cooked their meals right on that, right there on
Really?
the head of the truck. They would have put their bully beef right on there.
That's fantastic. Great. And then I noticed the wheels, obviously the directional wheels, so these are going and go left, right, wherever you want to put them, right?
Omnidirectional wheels.
Omnidirectionals, yeah.
All that was made for back then is so the enemy couldn't tell which way you were going, coming or going.
Exactly.
It was omnidirectional.
Yeah.
And it's a split rim design.
Right.
So we had to have maintainers do that. I couldn't personally take it off and change the tire.
Okay.
You'll notice that the rivets, I'll close the door
Sure.
here. The rivets are painted red. That tells us not to touch these.
Interesting.
Because it's a compressed rim.
Okay.
So it has to be done on a special machine.
Okay.
I could take the tire off and change it with the spare,
right.
but I could never take the red ones off because that would literally explode out.
Wow.
So,
okay.
And that's maintainers have to do that.
Sure. Let's talk a little bit about symbolism here. So what are we looking at in terms of, you know, I know a little bit, but maybe to the viewers, what are we looking at in the terms of the numbers here?
So we've set this up as the TAC symbols of what our regiment, 7th Toronto Regiment,
Yep.
would have been in World War II.
Fantastic.
So 2nd Division, 1st Division, and then every vehicle has to have a TAC sign.
Right.
So we would be A1, the
Yep.
first gun in the line.
Nice.
A2, A3, A4, all the way down the line.
Sure. And then obviously A1, so in the artillery there's some competitive edge when we get into action or going into action. So normally the gun leaning in the line, in the A1 line, would be normally the fastest, but not always. But coming into action, it's always a competition, so I'm sure you guys probably have a similar kind of competitive edge. That's good.
Yes.
Awesome, fantastic.
You want to be 1-5 Alpha always, and usually that would be the most experienced number 1
Sure.
or detachment commander. I mean, for 2 reasons. One, yes, he's supposedly the best, the fastest,
yeah.
but also he's a wealth of information
That's
for the other
right.
detachment commanders and the other people on the gun line.
For sure, for sure. And then one final thing I want to touch here, this flag. Can you explain a little bit about the flag?
Well, it is. I can barely hold it. It's backwards.
Yeah.
So it's got our crest on it, and it's actually what they would have had World War II. Mm-hmm. The crest is the same as on your shirt, mine, and our hat. Mm-hmm. It's the artillery crest with a Queen's crown. We haven't transitioned to the King's crown yet. That one's got the Queen's crown on it, which is 2 humps, and it's got our Latin saying, Ubique fa, gloria ducant,
exactly.
which is everywhere with a right and glory lead. So we fly that as a badge of pride. It's got the flaming grenades on it, as you see, which are part of our dress uniform. Mm-hmm. Can't say much more.
It's beautiful seeing it. It is. It really is. It's not often you see that flag, honestly, along the regiment, and when you see it, it's just a little humbling, you know, especially being working around other gunners. Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing today.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
I'm actually going to be working with the Limber gunners today in the reenactment at Aquino Weekend, so it's going to be some fun. We're going to put some rounds down range and see how it goes. So yeah, let's get into some looking around the rest of the weekend here.
Watch your head. There you go. We can fit everybody in here.
Cozy.
Cozy.
Bunch of cozy gunners.
Oh yeah. I'll sit over here.
About to head out to deploy 2 guns, 2 25-pounders. This is my gun and my gun crew in the back here. Snug as a bug in a rug. It's not hot in there at all, right?
No. Caribbean cool.
Yeah, because they went around.
And Joe in the red there, so he's going to be leading us. And then we're going to set up and deploy out to the field here with our good 2 guns.
Oh, here comes Rich. Take notes and have it right.
Just a T-54 in the way as we get ready for our fire mission. You know, and an entire British reconnaissance regiment. side. Be time. Gun one! Help!
Hey, Dad! Dad!
I think you're putting it over here.
Yeah, advance.
Back!
So we have set up our gun line, guns 1 and 2 of the Limber Gunners. We've got the two 25-pounders set down range here at Aquino Tank Weekend. We've got 10 rounds per gun. So we're going to do a 5 for effect mission shortly here. And yeah, we're going to apparently destroy some German targets coming up. We just saw a Panzer drive by, so that was kind of interesting. And yeah, we've got the Limber Gunners here. Everybody's got their own little position. Lots of blank cartridges ready to fire, which is super fun. And yeah, it's a hot day, but it is a lot of fun being able to interact with the gunners here. So it's like, you know, once a gunner, always a gunner. A lot of, you know, family care here for one another. So it's kind of fun. So yeah, we'll put some rounds down range shortly here.
There's a miss.
Cancel, make safe! Number 2, fire! Unload! Load! Correct! 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 Number 2, fire! Unload! 2 rounds complete! Okay, count, trace away.
So there you have it, everyone. An absolutely fantastic day working with the Limber Gunners on 2 separate fire missions. One, me as the number 1, and another one which I haven't put on much of the footage here today because I actually did a separate video. You can go check that out. It's kind of a sneak preview to this video where I actually get involved with both fire missions. But once again, thank you again to the Limber Gunners, and particularly, you know, Joe for really embracing and allowing me to get involved with the teams here, and also to my crew. You were awesome and allowing me to work with you, so thank you for working hard and being very professional and honestly just being good people to a stranger. You know, it's always somewhat a little awkward having an influencer or a YouTuber just coming into the light with you all of a sudden and, hey, who's this guy? But you embraced me into your gun crew. I really appreciate that. And once again, you know, as an artillery family, it's really cool to be able to just work with people and know that you're autonomously just going to be gunners and you work together as an artillery group. Fantastically, we got to have some drinks after the first fire mission day. Hung out with some of the old and new gunners through generational artillery, you know, stories and having a good drink. It was a fantastic time. And a big shout out to one of the reenacting gunners who wanted me to do a bit of a thanks and shout out to him, to his girlfriend, because she was there to support him on the event as well. And here he is actually loading a blank cartridge. So thanks again, good sir, for allowing me to work on your gun platform. Here is him and his girlfriend having a wonderful day out, so I hope they have a great time watching this video, and thanks to everyone who has watched this video as well. It's really appreciative. If you've made it to almost the 40-minute mark, then good for you. Leave me a comment if you did make it to the 40-minute mark, and maybe I'll send you a little gift in the mail. But to get that gift in the mail, you have to follow me on Instagram, because that's the only form of communication I'm going to have with you, and it has to come from my official Instagram page, and you have to actually follow me as a request. I don't have it public anymore for many other reasons, but thanks again for watching, folks. Have a wonderful day. All the best. Your week.